Hello, I'm John. So in 1923, a man by the name of Freeman Dyson was born in Crowthorne, England. Since then, he's made several contributions to science. He's solved several equations regarding quantum physics and things like that. In his lifetime, he's won several awards, as you can see here. He's still alive. He's pretty old, I guess. And in 1960, he wrote a paper for a journal called Science, called "The Search for Artificial Stellar Sources of Infrared Radiation." In this journal, he mentions that if we were to find life in outer space, and it was more intelligent than us, then we would look for a structure that encapsulates a star. This object is called the Dyson sphere. Okay, so I'm going to basically just walk you through what is a Dyson sphere, like what's the point of it, and then I'll talk about is it possible to do with our technology, and actually there are many answers to that question. I will the reason that I picked this topic is because in science fiction you actually see this quite often. Science fiction authors love to reference this sphere. It's kind of bizarre. There's no real reason why. They just like seeing massive objects in space that are artificially made. And to you guys, what would it have to do with you? Well, nothing yet, I guess. But in maybe about 2,000 years, when Earth's resources are used up, we'll need a place to go. And, well, I'll explain the use of the Dyson sphere when we get there. So I'd like to open up with a clip from Star Trek. Where Picard will basically explain to you, or give you a good overview of what a Dyson sphere is. Can you click on it? Yeah.
I'm having difficulty scanning the object. It appears to be approximately 200 million kilometers in diameter.
That's nearly as large as the Earth's orbit around the Sun. I didn't even detect this before now.
The object's enormous mass is causing a great deal of gravimetric interference. That might have prevented our sensors from detecting it before we dropped out of warp.
Mr. Data, could this be a Dyson sphere?
The object does fit the general parameters of Dyson's theory. The Dyson sphere.
It's a very old theory, number one. I'm surprised that you haven't heard of it. In the 20th century, a physicist called Freeman Dyson postulated the theory that an enormous hollow sphere could be constructed around a star. This would have the advantage of harnessing all the radiant energy of that star. Any population living on the interior surface would have virtually inexhaustible sources of power.
You think that people living there? Possibly a great number of people, Commander. The interior surface area of a sphere this size is the equivalent of more than 250 million Class M planets.
Okay. So if you didn't get that, it's basically a very, very large solar power plant. And due to its size and the amount of surface area that it covers, there's just an amazing amount of space that you can live in. Of course, the problem with the science fiction version of this is Dyson originally didn't think of a solid shell as his Dyson sphere. He actually envisioned it more as several, I guess, floating islands, you can say, all detached from each other. Yeah. Go ahead. So yeah, this is basically what a Dyson shell would look like if it were to be constructed. It's just literally a solid shell. It goes all the way around a star. A star would be in the center. Of course, the largest problems with this is that it's incredibly hard to construct. You can't just send it into orbit while you're constructing it to make it simple, mostly because it encapsulates the entire star. There's also a problem with how much material you need to construct it, and things like if an asteroid were to bump into it, it would probably send the entire sphere crashing into the sun, things like that. These are concepts of what Freeman Dyson actually considered. The ring is probably the most feasible version of the Dyson sphere by today's standards, because as you can see, all these little dots they would each be their own island, like I said earlier, and you can just launch each one into orbit around the sun, and it would be very simple to construct, and it would also provide definitely enough space and energy. I guess if we were to approach the limit of energy production of a single ring, you can move on to multiple rings. But of course, the physics gets more awkward as you move on. The other theory is something called the Dyson Bubble. Of course, again, each dot represents an island, and how this one works is basically they kind of hover over the star. They use very light parachutes to keep themselves suspended. This one is only difficult to do because we don't have the technology to make something light enough to keep it suspended. Okay. So in conclusion, basically, a Dyson sphere is a very large solar power plant and it provides an incredibly large amount of living space. The most feasible Dyson sphere concept is the ring. It's simple, it's efficient, it's easy to construct, and the shell is the most difficult concept to produce. And I hope you learned something about the Dyson sphere.
So, Mike, what did you think?
I don't know if this was just me, but I felt like I was getting set up for a completely different speech in the beginning. He opened up with talking about Freeman Dyson and all his different awards and accomplishments, and I thought, okay, well, he's going to do something on Freeman Dyson and he didn't really have an attention device or any of that stuff. And then all of a sudden he launches into Dyson spheres, so I didn't really see that connection until just like somebody, blah, here it is. It didn't seem very well practiced. He seemed kind of scared almost. He spent about half of the time stuttering and thinking for what next to say. Some of the other stuff was, a little loosely connected to the idea of the basic points. I didn't think there was very much supporting material or any of the theories behind the Dyson sphere or any of the research that Dyson did, or any of the information that he postulated about these spheres. I think the YouTube clip probably could have been a little bit shorter. It was a little bit more informative, and I think after that it picked up a little bit. You did talk a little bit more about, this is a Dyson sphere, this is what he actually postulated could be possible. So, as the speech went on, it became a little bit more informative. He said, it's a way to collect vast amounts of energy from a star. So I think if you started with that sort of idea and built from that, it would be a much stronger speech.
Okay. I kind of know what you're talking about on the delivery issue. It's just, John, you need to practice a little bit more. You never really kind of develop a flow. Presentation is not the heavy emphasis on this on this particular assignment. So I don't want to worry too much about that right now. That'll be something that you'll get more with either another prepared speech if you rehearse it more, or if you're doing an impromptu presentation on the next go-around, you'll probably just talk more naturally to the audience and be less focused on trying to remember the next thing that comes up. I do kind of know what Mike's talking about at the opening, because you tell us about Dyson at the beginning, and it's right when you're about halfway through that information, I realized, okay, this is your attention device. This is the story about, where I know you're over there somewhere. There you are. This is the story about the guy who came up with this theory. But the story goes on, I think, a little bit longer. It needed to be condensed a little bit, and then you need to reveal. And the reason I'm talking about him is because he's postulated this interesting theory about how we could harvest energy and potentially live in outer space. And it comes up frequently in science fiction, and that's what I really want to talk about. And so you need that transition phrase. You need a shorter part of that story so that it's clear that the focus is on this particular theory. Once you started talking about the theory, I thought you did a pretty good job about those kinds of things. You kind of introduced the idea. You do let Captain Picard do a lot of the explanation. I think his explanation helps clarify a lot about what it is we're supposed to get from this theory and how it would work. But when you talk about it, you describe, how, he postulated the way this might work, and how it could potentially be constructed, and what some of the variants on it are. And I thought that was pretty good. The internal structure, it sounded like you had a preview at the beginning, but during the speech I didn't really hear any signposts on those points. I think mostly you're trying to let the slides kind of organize the information for you. At the end, in the summary, I did think that you had a very nice summary that as I'm listening to the summary, I said, okay, that's how all this information fits together. And I won't say it rescues the material entirely, but it makes it a lot more digestible than it was before. It seemed not random per se, but it just didn't seem like it flowed together the way it was going to at the beginning. And at the end, I think it does sound a little bit more like it flows together. I do think that you need to cite the material a little bit more. I know that you've got a slide with your bibliography on it, so I know there's research here, but you're not getting any of the citations into the presentation. The visuals I thought were all very solid. I kind of agree maybe the clip went on a little bit long, but I didn't time it. It can take you out of the speech, but like I said, it had a very good description of what you were talking about in there, and it kind of puts it into that science fiction context. So I don't think it was a problem. Everything else on the images were large and easy to see. They were descriptive of what you were talking about. You usually had a pretty good explanation of them, so I thought that those all worked pretty well. All right, thank you.